Good morning, everyone. I'm Amy Latessa from UCIT Research and Development, and in tandem with UC Libraries, we are hosting a Data and Computational Science series, part of the Universal Provider Award from the Office of the Provost. And this is Jeremy Fischer from IU, and he knows all there is to know about Jetstream, and much more than me. And so he's gonna, this morning we're just doing an overview, Q&A about the resource and how to access it and what it can do. And then this afternoon there will be a using the Jetstream API session from 1 to 4. So if you can come, it's hands-on. And this is a very good and you will learn free resource that researchers here at UC can use. So take it away.
Thank you very much. So again, I'm Jeremy Fischer. I'm the Senior Technical Advisor for Jetstream. What that basically means is whatever they need done, they send me to do. I'm going to tell you about the resource today. This afternoon is a hands-on API tutorial. It's more of the advanced topic. It's not actually going to be using the Atmosphere interface that I'm going to show you in the presentation. We'll probably be back at some point for another Atmosphere tutorial. So when that happens, Amy will let everybody know, I'm sure. But without further ado, I'm going to jump in. If you have questions as we go, please interrupt me. I want to answer all the questions, so don't hesitate. So a little bit about the background of where Jetstream comes from. So the National Science Foundation has typically funded HPC in the more traditional sense. So they've looked at the larger machines like Blue Waters and Stampede, and now Stampede 2 and Comet, which are more traditional HPC. They moved along in the last few years and started funding things like Cloud Lab and Chameleon, so exploring clouds for academic use and for research. And then now they've moved on to doing full production clouds such as Bridges and Jetstream. So the why, what this stemmed out of is, there's a lot of words on here, but what it really comes down to is everybody that was surveyed, all the researchers that were surveyed said that they did not have enough computing resources to get their work done. Everybody needs resources. However, these same people also said that they really didn't use XSEED resources. So XSEED is the XD program from the NSF, the Extreme Digital Program, that builds cyber infrastructure for the national scale. So you see the disconnect. Nobody has enough resources, but a lot of people aren't actually using what's there. So that started the thought process of, why aren't people using it? What can we do to help people use it? And that brought us to a new way of thinking for some of the cloud services. So that brought us to Jetstream. And we are the NSF's first production cloud facility, part of the XD program. And again, part of our focus is on making it easy to use, lowering the barrier to doing research. A lot of people, the first thing they say is, I don't need a supercomputer. Using a supercomputer is hard. That's why we focus on a very broad use, ease of usability sort of thing. We provide virtual machines that have scientific software for people to do their work. One of the biggest things, and we're going to look at this afternoon, is programmable cyber infrastructure. So if you're doing things that are a little more complex, you need to have a lot of control. This gives you the ability to do that. And what I mean by programmable cyber infrastructure, you need to create a virtual cluster of your own for very specific work. You need to have things that talk to each other internally with a public-facing server. Basically creating your own sort of very custom cyber infrastructure. And then, obviously for science, reproducibility. It gives you the ability to share VMs with colleagues. It gives you the ability to also publish and get a DOI for a VM and make that available to the world at large. So the who. So Jetstream being a cloud system, you're not going to get thousands and thousands of cores at a time. What you do get from an Atmosphere instance is anywhere from 1 to 44 cores. It's for people that are doing software development or other research development where they really need to have full control over everything. You have 100% control on your virtual machine, so you can do just about anything you want. It's for Science Gateway creators. How many people in here know what a Science Gateway is? Oh, good. So Science Gateways are a fantastic means that developers will make a usually web-based front end where they'll have a certain workflow set up for specific kinds of research. So to give an example, anybody here familiar with NAMD? Okay, that's not a good one then. So that's a molecular chemistry. ChemCompute is another chemistry one, but it's for education. So I'll use that as an example. They have a gateway that basically students come use. You log into a web interface. You tell it which research package you want to use, and they have a few predefined. So they have 3 or 4 sitting there. You give it your data set and give it your parameters and press the go button. And what it does is it actually either processes it on that machine or farms it off to a supercomputer on the back end and then returns the values to you. And that way it simplifies, it lowers the barrier to people being able to do research. They don't actually have to have the supercomputer access. They don't have to know how to submit jobs. They have to know basically what they need to submit to get their work back, and that's it. So science gateways are a great way to expand the research capabilities to more people. And Jetstream provides a good home for that. And then lastly, which is near and dear to me, is STEM educators teaching on a variety of subjects. One of the things that I've really tried to push for over the last couple of years is using Jetstream in a classroom setting for courses, for tutorials, for workshops. Because what you can do is you as an educator can come in and build your image beforehand. You put all the software you need on there, you put all your data you need on there, and then you save it. And then your students come in and they each launch their own. 1, you don't have any interference. 2, you know everything's ready to go. You don't have the problem with lab computers or laptops where sometimes things just don't always work as expected. You can launch it again and again and again and again and always have that same environment. So what we aren't, and I've touched on this, we are not traditional HPC. If you need 1,000 cores or 2,000 cores, we're not going to be the right place for you. There's no shared file system, so if you're looking for the giant scratch space that you find on an HPC box, well, that's not us either. You have to think cloudy, which is more of distributed file systems. There's no high-speed interconnect. So again, these are all things that feed into HPC. There aren't GPUs, and there's a yet. We're working on that. And I like to say we're not Amazon, Azure, or Google, because everybody says, well, how are you different from Amazon? We provide a lot of the same services, sure. Where we are different is we are a research system powered by people that know how to support researchers. That's what we do. The group I work for has a history of all we do is support people doing research and support educators doing research. So we like to think that that's our strength. So again, how many of you are HPC users? Okay, so a couple. So if you're coming from HPC world, it's a little different life. You have no reservations, no queuing. You come in, you get your instance, and you start to work. You get to be your own admin. And so you have root. There's a little caveat there. You really can have almost any Linux software you want. You can also gleefully shoot yourself in the foot. I've watched people do it. It's both entertaining and sad all at the same time. You can come in and delete your own file system out from under yourself. I've seen it happen. It's not pretty. But with that goes the ability to create a custom software stack, create your custom environment, create what you need to get your research done. And then the other feature is we're constantly evolving. So OpenStack is a very active development. OpenStack provides the underlying layer for cloud services, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But the upside to it is, since it is constantly being developed, we're constantly adding features. So things like Manila, which are file systems as a service, or doing Hadoop as a service, which is something that we're adding now. These are things that we're looking at adding as features to the cloud overall. So the way of the cloud. So for those of you that have been in this for far too long like I have, you remember the days where the hardware was ludicrously expensive and basically you expected it to last forever. It was going to be bulletproof. And then you have today where the hardware is relatively cheap and you expect it to fail, but you expect your software stack to stay up. So it's a little different way today is thinking in terms of the hardware is completely disposable, but you expect that the underlying infrastructure will always be there. But my favorite part of it, and this is my favorite slide in the whole thing, so thinking about VMs as cattle, not pets. And this is, again, the biggest way of changing for HPC to cloud users. And since most of you are not HPC users, it probably won't apply to you, but it's still a good way to think of if you have your VMs and you made it so you saved it, you've got your custom stack, you can launch it again and again and again. And if you have one of them die on you, well, you just delete it and move on, and you do it again and again and again. And you don't have any issue with that. It's very replicable. You don't lose any time rebuilding because you've already got it saved. Whereas if you have a pet, you know, you've spent all this time on it. When it dies, you're very, very sad. Your research goes along with it. So hopefully you start thinking in the way of thinking about VMs as one of many. So this is what Jetstream looks like from a hardware overview. So this is what I like to call the 40,000 foot view. There are two main clusters. One is at IU and one is at Texas Austin. There's a small cluster at Arizona, which is for internal development and testing. Nobody can actually access it but us, but it looks really good on a diagram, so I leave it there. As you can see, there's 320 nodes at each site. We're connected by internet too, so there's nice fast interconnect between the clouds and the world. And then this kind of gives an idea. So again, 320 nodes. We're not going to talk about all the hardware, but relatively recent hardware, 24 core machines. And then the platform overview. So these racks are actually pretty representative of what Jetstream looks like. It's much bigger, obviously. But you have these racks sitting on top of this OpenStack, which is what I like to call the cloud operating system. It sits on top of the operating system and manages the virtualization functions. Then you have Ceph, which is the back end. And then sitting on top of that are the things that most people are going to access, which is Atmosphere. Atmosphere brings the nice GUI interface to managing virtual machines. So anybody in here ever touch OpenStack? Okay, most people haven't, so I usually expect 0, which is fantastic. It also means no bad habits to break. So Atmosphere provides a nice GUI interface to managing your virtual machines. OpenStack does a great job of it, and we're going to talk this afternoon about using the command line to spin up things on OpenStack. OpenStack also has a GUI, and we're going to look at that briefly this afternoon, but while it's good, it's not very robust, and for a novice cloud user, it can be a little daunting. So Atmosphere tries to make that a much simpler process. And this is actually what you would see when you first log into Jetstream. So this is the Atmosphere dashboard. You log in, inadvertently pushed the button. You log in and you see the 3 big buttons at the top for launching, getting help, changing settings. You can see what you're using. You can't scroll down because this is a PowerPoint slide and not an interface, but it kind of gives you an idea of what you see when you log in. Talking more about the image library. So this is when you log in and go to the images, you can see the different things that are available. Now this is a little older, so you have like the CentOS featured image and the BioLinux featured image and things like that. The featured images are one that we, Jetstream, maintain. So we keep these up to date, we keep them ready to go. We like to add to them. We've added 2 in the last month or 2. We're getting ready to add a new Ubuntu image. So these are the ones that we maintain. If you could scroll down, there are literally thousands after this of images that have been made by people in the community, people using Jetstream for all sorts of fields. So they've made them public. You can launch them. You can try them out. We don't support them, so we don't guarantee them to work. But the featured images we do. So looking more at the web interface, when you actually go to launch, this is what makes it really simple. You tell it what your name is, what the instance name is, what version you're going to use, and then where you want to launch it, and what size you want to launch it, and then you go. It's really just that easy. You fill in a couple things and hit launch, and then you wait about 5 to 10 minutes depending on the size of the machine. And then you have an active machine. And so this is what it would look like with the machine being active. You can see there's a real honest-to-God IP number. Every VM in Atmosphere gets a real IP number. So you can set up web services if you need them. You can SSH to it from out and far beyond. But you have a real live IP to work with. So this is kind of what it would look like to have a machine running. And then to talk about the different sizes. So we talked a little bit about when you launch, you have to have a name, and you have to have the image, and you have to have a size. Well, these are the different sizes. So again, from 1 to 44 vCPUs, the different amounts of RAM available, and then the different amount of disk. And this last just tells how many can stack on each node. So there are 320 nodes. You can do that math, and that's a whole lot of tinies. Now in reality, people are using just a variety of different things. Of course, the first thing that happens every time when anybody gets access to Jetstream, the first thing they do is they launch an XXL, which is the biggest one. It's just everybody's had it. I don't know why, but they figure out pretty quickly they don't need it, and they walk away from it because it's burning their allocation. But we'll talk about allocations in a minute. So to actually use the Jetstream VMs, there are a bunch of different methods. So you have the Atmosphere interface that we talked about, which is coming in through your web browser. We have coming in through API access, which we're actually going to cover this afternoon. That's more of an advanced topic. I don't want to discourage anybody from being there, but it's definitely for people that are familiar and happy with command line, because it's very command line centric this afternoon. API access does bring you a few different things, so people that are interested in doing science gateways or always on services, this is where you probably need to be, so it's something to think about. For actually logging in, you can use your web browser. We have a web shell and web SSH built into our web browser interface on Atmosphere. In fact, if you go back here, these little buttons right here actually launch Open Web Shell, Open Web Desktop. Will actually, in your web browser, give you an SSH session or give you a UE desktop session.
Chairman?
Yes? Hi.
Okay. So the APIs, would that be something, we have some researchers that are interested in doing some processing analytics on Jetstream and then publishing the results to a website? Would that be where an API would come into play? Or
if they wanted to host, if they wanted to host their data on Jetstream, yes. Because right now, currently in Atmosphere, you cannot get a static IP. So while the odds of that IP changing are low, if we take the system down, or if you shut your VM down for any length of time, the odds are you're going to get a new IP number. So if you want to have that same IP and be able to set a DNS name to go to, myscience.ucincinnati.edu or uc.edu, you'd have to be on the API side.
To do some coding.
Right.
So can you explain maybe a little more about what a science gateway for people that don't?
We actually covered that right before you came in.
Okay, sorry, I'm like,
It's all right.
I'm with the UC.
But if there-
ranges, but okay. So they understand the concept of it,
Yeah.
because I don't know that everybody does.
But if there are questions still on it, please fire away.
No,
Please.
sorry.
No, it's all good. No. Questions are good, Jay. Questions are good. I always feel bad when I get through one of these and nobody asks any questions. I'm like, what have I done wrong? Okay, so you can do access to the VMs completely in the web browser. For those of you that are like me, I like using old school SSH terminals, and occasionally I'll use a VNC client. That is available to you as well. So you don't have to be tied to your browser. Most people like it because they can get to it from anywhere. I have to admit that I no longer keep an SSH client on my iPad whenever I'm out anywhere and it's like, oh, I need to go be able to SSH into something. I actually open a Jetstream session and just open it in my browser. It's just easy. And I'm an old school sysadmin, so. So this is a little bit about some of the biggest users of Jetstream, and this is getting an overhaul today. Our NSF review is next week, so all these stats are getting updated right now. But for now, we have biological science as our biggest research consumer. Campus and domain champions are actually support and training, so they're actually not doing research per se, but they're enabling people to do research. The biggest reason for biological science is mostly what we found with them is their runtimes are a lot longer than traditional HPC will allow. So most HPC systems, you get 48 hours, you might get a week in the queue to run your jobs, and what we found is a lot of the biology folks, they need weeks and weeks, and this is what Jetstream gives them that ability, because we don't tell them when you can run. You have your allocation, you run until you don't need to run. Computational and computer science are easy ones. We're a natural fit. You can set up your environment, customize it as you need it. You can have all your programming tools. You can have whatever suites you need on there and save it and have it ready to go. Again, education is near and dear to me. I've been working hard to get a lot of educational use out of Jetstream. From when this slide was done, which was several months ago, we actually have over 40 education allocations presently, so we're really ramping up use for coursework use of it. Geoscience is an area that's building for us, as is humanities. one of the biggest things, and this is one of my favorite stories to kind of relate is, so I travel pretty much nonstop for my job. This is kind of what I do, is go out and I bring researchers onto Jetstream. One of the biggest things I find, especially at smaller universities, is, oh, I don't have any research needs. Okay, well, tell me a bit about what you do. And so they'll start talking, and it's like, well, I run R and I do it on my laptop, and yeah, it has to run for 2 weeks and I can't shut it down and I pray that it doesn't crash, but I really don't have any research needs. Yeah, I think you do. So we start talking at that point, and they start realizing that there are all these things that are available to them, and that makes them happy that they have a place they can run it. They don't have to worry about it crashing and burning on them. And it can really enable their time to science, it can enable the time to results, and make replication that much easier. Again, molecular sciences, network sciences, these are just a little representative. These do not in any way represent all of the things that are on Jetstream. Question?
I was just wondering if we know what the audience represents.
That's a great question. I'd love to know
Maybe go
that.
around and have everybody introduce themselves and say.
Let's do that. Let's take a break and do that. So we'll start with you, sir.
Okay, Greg Bucks, Department of Engineering Education.
Oh.
You're looking at this from a standpoint of providing access to multiple software packages for our first year engineering students.
Right. So you work with PK, Emory, so you met with, no,
Yes.
George.
Well, George did, and then I was on an email loop with them as well.
Right, so we're bringing MATLAB to all your long freshmen.
Yep. We'll be talking about MATLAB specifically in a moment. Fantastic.
I'm Kumar Devaganti from Mechanical Engineering.
Excellent.
I'm Peng Wang from Operations Business Analytics and Information Systems. I do like statistics and machine learning, so I primarily use R and MATLAB.
Fantastic. We have a home for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm Kwame Ija, a grad student, electrical engineering.
Okay.
So my group is looking to apply some deep learning signal processing applications.
Fantastic. Are you GPU bound, or is it everything?
It's for sure it's going to be GPU bound, but for research base we don't really need
Okay.
GPU. It's mostly proof of concept.
Okay.
So
Fantastic. We've got a home for you too.
I'm Amy Koschhofer, Science Informationist with UC Libraries.
Brett Harnett, Director of Biomedical Informatics, co-chair R&D Committee.
Fantastic.
I'm a visiting scholar. I'm from China, the National Science Library.
Fantastic.
Richard Johansson, Data Visualization Specialist at UC Libraries.
Linda Warwick from that department.
Oh, excellent. Actually have a number of mathematicians using Jetstream as well. So, excellent. But this, like I said, this kind of gives a representation of the things that are going on. Again, as long as what you're doing kind of fits the profile, you're not needing thousands and thousands of cores, there's a lot of ways that we can probably find Jetstream to work for you. So hey, without ado, the MATLAB slide. So MATLAB, MathWorks has graciously allowed Jetstream to utilize the site licenses at TAC and at IU. And so any users on Jetstream can use MATLAB. You do not have to bring your own MATLAB license. You can use it from anywhere. You are not bound to a campus. You are not bound to any particular location. You launch the VM, you launch MATLAB, it goes. We recently updated the MATLAB image, so it is running the latest version we're licensed for, which is typically one version back from the newest. So it's R2018B instead of 2018A, but it is up to date and ready to use. So if you have engineering students that need to use it, and I always know that MATLAB historically, at least for IU, was always tied to the labs. So if you wanted to do it, you had to come onto campus, you had to hope for a free lab, and this removes a lot of the constraints. You can, since you have root access, anything that's one of the free toolkits, you can add on to, or if you do have a license for a toolkit we don't license, you can add it on as well. Simulink is included. There are 40-some toolkits that are also involved in this that are also licensed. So there's a list on the actual image itself in Jetstream that tells you what all is included in it.
I'm very interested in that last bullet point that you had there. I'm from engineering.
Sure.
And one of the issues we run into for some of the projects is we need access to software.
Okay.
About, I would say, half or more than half the work that we do involves using commercial software.
Sure.
And software development on a Linux platform is probably the best one. So the challenge we run into, there are two challenges. One is licenses are expensive.
Sure.
And especially if you're in the exploratory stages, you don't yet have funding to get the licenses.
Absolutely.
You know, that it's the chicken or egg problem.
Absolutely.
The second issue we have is even when there is money, sometimes with the, I don't know if this issue is unique to UC, but getting a license agreement between UC and a commercial vendor is like pulling teeth.
No, that's not unique to UC at all. That's everywhere.
Okay.
It's not comforting, but at some level, at least you know it's not just you.
I guess it's good to know because I've been cursing them. They've been sitting on one for like 2 months.
Yeah.
And it's a, anyway.
Is that
and-
purchasing that you go through for that?
Yeah. Yeah. And this is, run-of-the-mill software.
I might be able to help. I mean, I don't know.
But,
but
I will get you both.
Yeah, well, I mean, well, that would be
People
great.
don't say no to
but,
change.
well, I mean, I may be able to talk, maybe sometimes just another person that we can talk about it.
Okay, yeah, I would really good.
If it makes you feel better, everybody at IU refers to our department of purchasing as department of basically of roadblocks. It's about making. I really think they try to discourage the spending by making the process take so long. So yeah, it's sadly not just you.
So but in terms of considering other requests, as you say here, are you suggesting that there's a budget to be had if there's a tool that might be useful to many people?
So Jetstream doesn't have a software budget. However, IU has a software budget, and we also have a lot of site licenses already. So IU, taking off the Jetstream hat for a minute and putting on my Indiana University hat, we have a lot of site licenses that have existed for a long time. So we have a lot of relationships with a lot of companies. If there's a package that we overlap on, and this would be something where send me an email with the things you're interested in, and I'll go exploring. And if we already license it, then we can probably see if they can extend the license to Jetstream. In a lot of cases, they will, because they look at it as the sort of addiction. The first hit's free, and they get you hooked on their software, and then you're going to pay for it. With a lot of these companies, the other thing is that IU's been paying for so long. We're a good customer, and so they, like MathWorks, did us favors because we've been with them so long. The one company I'll tell you right now, and probably won't apply to you, is Gaussian. They're draconian and evil, and I don't want to talk about their licensing schemes. But for Jetstream, they ruled that we were a commercial service, even though we are nationally funded, don't charge, have never been anything but related to universities, and only serve universities and research institutions. We're commercial in their eyes, and they wanted $36,000 a year per rack. I can't remember what it was horrible. It was awful. It's basically, I could go out and buy multiple Ferraris for what they wanted. And yeah. But I'll make sure you have my card before this is all over. And if you have a list of things that you're interested in, we can see where the overlap is. And, again, if there's demand from other places, even if it's something we don't have, if we can serve the larger scientific community by making this available, it might be worth our while to do it. So before you leave, let me make sure to get a business card in your hand.
Okay, great.
Other questions? Okay. And what I'd like to say, again, talking about the breakdown of how Jetstream is allocated, we're not just the usual suspects. So high energy physicists, molecular chemists, they've known how to fill an HPC machine since the beginning of time. You give a high energy physicist a cluster of their own, and it's going to be filled in hours, if not minutes.
Computational dynamics.
Yeah.
Fluid dynamics.
Oh yeah, man, they can eat a system like nobody's business. Yeah, and they're good at it. They've been doing it for a long time. Part of our mission has been to bring computational resources to people that are not being served today. And so what I like to call not the usual suspects. You don't see a lot of financial analysis people using HPC, and we're starting to see people doing that more and more on Jetstream. We're actually working with the Federal Reserve to bring researchers on board that are doing different types of financial analysis. And it's everything from watching trends in bankruptcies and trying to predict to what one of them would term the fire sale, which was watching how the results of different sell-offs in different markets have affected global economies. So it's very interesting stuff. Political science, for better or worse, we live in a time when Twitter rules the world, and there's a lot of analysis going on and a lot of trending and a lot of looking at different news sources and matching up with social media and things like that. Humanities and text analysis is a relatively new addition to research. As more and more things get digitized, the ability to let people study those and analyze those in an electronic way is really getting, it's really broadening out. Network analysis, using a platform like Jetstream where you can build your own internal networks using the programmable cyber infrastructure. It gives you a means to do that without having to have physical facilities. Computer science and machine learning. And then one of my favorites is satellite data analysis. We have a student at IU that is working on his PhD that's using near real-time Google Maps to do delta erosion analysis all over the world. And it's actually been really cool to watch the evolution of this project, and it's brought several other projects in and several other researchers in on top of it. So each of these kind of begets another researcher and another researcher and another, and it's been really interesting to watch it fan out from the usual suspects. Jetstream for education. I can't seem to plug this enough. I really like this topic. Hey, can you tell I like this topic? So Jetstream is in use at a number of for a number of courses. At IU specifically, there's 2 graduate courses that are being used right now. Actually, they may have graduated this week. So as of last week, this was still current. But it's an example of the coursework that's being done. We had a course of 200 students doing different sorts of data and text analysis. We had other courses doing computational science. It's an obvious platform for computational science and computer science. Working with other resources like Blue Waters, where we did a workflow workshop using a Jetstream front end feeding stuff into Blue Waters. So sort of a limited science gateway for people that were working. Oh, sorry. Blue Waters is a Track 1 resource funded by the NSF that is at Illinois, Champaign-Urbana. It's one of the largest academic supercomputers out there. It's about to be replaced in a new Track 1 that'll be awarded either this year or next year. Huge scale HPC. Research data alliance workshops, which are basically doing software analysis and computational analysis all over the world, actually. And then we have a lot of workshops on using Galaxy, which is a bioinformatics gateway. It's a web-based gateway that lets you do different workflows for various bioinformatics analysis. Data analysis and finance using R was a recent workshop. They actually had multiple days on doing sort of tiered and cascading research, which was kind of cool. Security and intrusion detection. That was a stretch. We did virtualization inside virtualization for that one. So there was actually an image that I built that ran inside there, ran another virtualization system to run vulnerable systems so students could actually attack systems without coming afoul of their own IT offices. So that was an interesting one. It worked. We didn't know what would at the start, but it was an adventure. And then principles in cloud computing is another obvious one. But the point is that within reason, the possibilities are endless. If you have a classroom setting and you have a very specific software stack, you want to create your own software stack, you want something very specific to your class, we can give you the means to be able to do that easily and replicate it.
Allied Health, Victoria, Wendy Anderson
Yes.
is going to start using it, I believe, this summer for Jupyter notebooks.
Yeah.
Installing.
And how many in here use Jupyter now or are familiar with Jupyter? Okay, so a couple folks. So Jupyter is starting to be a huge teaching tool. We're seeing it everywhere. We're seeing lots of demand for it. One of the nice things with Jetstream, and it's documented in our wiki, is you can actually get your own Jupyter instance. You launch an instance and you type EZJ, and poof, everything gets installed, and you have a running Jupyter instance. You can load your own notebook, and away you go. So especially if you're teaching a class, this gets to be a real easy way to have all your students using a Jupyter notebook. You can use GitHub. They can download their notebook from there, their data from there. They launch their instance and run EZJ, and away they go. It's hard to get much easier.
In our College of Business, I believe in the PAIS is also looking at.
Yeah, Benny and I have ongoing talks. So.
Oh, good. Yeah, so to teach, to load different cloud computing environments, so you can teach them about that. So that's another good resource. The libraries we can use.
Any questions here before I move on? So I mentioned Galaxy before. So Galaxy's platform for biomedical research. They are one of our partners from Johns Hopkins. They provide a couple different things. One, they have what is called Use Galaxy. So they are a science gateway. They have a lot of set workflows, and you go to usegalaxy.org, you pick your tool set, you give it your inputs, and you set it free. And it comes back and gives you results in however long it takes. Part of that is it uses Jetstream to actually do some of that processing. So Use Galaxy is physically housed in Austin. When you submit a job, if it fits a certain profile, it actually goes to Jetstream, launches an instance, does the processing, returns everything back to Use Galaxy and then to you. The other side of that is the Galaxy team maintains a Galaxy image. So you can launch your own Galaxy, you can actually customize it to your heart's content, and then use it as you need to. You can set up as a gateway. We have a partnership with a group in Minnesota that is running multiple Galaxy gateways on Jetstream for doing proteomics and metaproteomics. So it's a very flexible system, and Galaxy's been great working with us to keep it running. So again, talking a little bit about gateways and some of the highlights from gateways. So these are the ways some people are using gateways. IRIS is a very, very large-scale earthquake and geological data center. So they collect seismic data from all over the world, specifically the United States, but all over the world. They provide the data, they look at analysis, they make data sets available for you to do your own analysis. So they're working on their infrastructure to serve that out to all researchers. Unidata is doing a very similar thing with meteorological data. So they have lots of real-time data, and they're actually working on a system of Jupyter Hub. So people can launch their own instances, connect to it, and do their own Jupyter-based analysis of their data. OpenMRS is providing medical record system for the resource constraints, so it's a worldwide project that is actually, they don't provide patient data, they don't do any of that, they provide just the software itself. So this is a sort of engineering level software development project. Cgrid doing computational chemistry, GenApp is doing computational chemistry, molecular dynamics, and then ChemCompute that I talked about earlier is actually a chemistry gateway for educational use. So that is intended primarily for students in classroom settings. So it's been a very successful gateway. The ChemCompute PI is actually coming to our NSF panel next week to talk because he's doing a really cool thing. You know, a lot of people do gateways for researchers, and he's doing a gateway meant for students, aimed at students for student use, and I really kind of get behind that. Things that are coming, Cypress, which is another bioinformatics gateway, neuroscience gateway, Ultrascan 3, these are things that are coming down the pipe.
Could you say something about ultrascan? Is that a medical imaging type?
It is medical imaging, it's MRIs.
Okay.
So I don't know all the technical details behind it, but basically they get MRI data, they do a scan analysis of it, not the actual images themselves, but data based on that, and then we'll do analysis of it from their gateway for users. You know, they could pick, you know, I believe they picked from demographic data, and they want to do this kind of analysis using these tools, and it returns all that for them.
Do you have anything on EMG or EEG?
I don't know. I'm not as schooled with the Ultrascan folks. They just came on board, so I haven't actually, now they've been around for a long time. So Ultrascan, if you actually go out and look for them, you can actually probably get a lot of information about them because they've been around for 12 years, 14 years. So in this, in a gateway context, that's they're old timers. It's run out of Texas, Houston, I believe, out of their medical facility there. But yeah, there'll be a lot of information about that online.
Okay.
And we're going to bring the Science Gateway.
Oh, you bring Marlon's team here?
Yes.
Fantastic.
So there's a team that helps people produce these gateways and use them. So we're going to bring them as part of the series that we're putting on to come and talk. There's also, I saw in August, if you're interested in actually developing gateways, there's a free boot camp in Chicago. So if that's something you're interested in, where they teach, train you how to create them and do the whole thing. But we'll be bringing them here hopefully in June.
And the Gateways team, they actually work on the floor below me, or most of them do. It's another split organization, but the head of it is on the floor below me. I've worked with them for a number of years. They are fantastic. They're great to work with. If you have any interest in providing any sort of gateway services at all, don't miss that. So little usage highlights. We'll try that again. I have not updated for April yet. I literally got those last night, so I didn't have a chance to update these numbers. It hasn't changed dramatically other than our user counts in the 2400s now. So 314 active projects. So these are different 314 PIs, 72 fields of science. That actually jumped a little bit, I believe. Like I said, 2,400 active users. This is the stat that really means something to us. So we calculated at the end of our operational year one that 86% of our users were new to Exceed. They have never used another Exceed resource, just Jetstream, which means our mission of going out and getting new users is working. So we're pretty happy about that, and we're going to be running that number again the next couple of days to find out the latest. So that's going to update soon, but we're pretty happy about that. 104 million core hours have been allocated since we started operations. Gateways are up, education and allocation. This is actually over 800 students now, or 850 students. So you can see we're a busy system, we're a growing system. We're hoping to keep that trend going because the question will come up, since we are NSF funded, how long will we be around? Our current funding goes through 2020. We expect to be asked to do the 5-year follow-on completion. Now that is at the NSF's discretion, but we expect based on our operations that we'll be asked to. So we're hoping to see Jetstream in its current incarnation around until 2025, and we're already talking about what comes next. So IU and looking at some other partners are already looking at doing another academic cloud in addition to Jetstream. So taking the things we've learned from Jetstream and helping especially smaller universities that maybe want to stand up their own OpenStacks, kind of buy in and work with us on doing that. So that's something we're looking at now.
Good question.
Oh, sorry.
So looking at the numbers, so we're considering this for use with our first year engineering classes.
Sure.
Which would mean 12 to 1,300 students.
We can do that.
Okay.
I'd love to do that, in fact.
But I mean, it's 2,000 current active users, 700 students. Isn't scalable for that.
We have lots of capacity left.
You can handle it all simultaneously?
Pretty much, yeah. Okay. Right now, the TAC Cloud, so IU has been averaging about 800 to 900 VMs. We figure we're about 60% full. That, however, is before we're getting ready to make some changes to our allocation policies. Right now, if you stop a VM or suspend a VM, and we'll talk about what those mean here in a bit. Actually, we won't today. No, we're not doing that walkthrough. When you stop or suspend a VM, you take up resources still, but you don't get charged for it. And that's going to change because the people that are doing that are preventing other people from using the system. So we're going to start charging for that. So that should change our user profile. It's not dollars, sorry. It's charged in allocation and service units, which we are going to talk about here in a second. You burn your allocation, which you do not pay for, but you still have to go through the process of getting the allocation. So hopefully people will want to maintain that and be more courteous. So, like I said, IU is sitting at 60 to 65%. We anticipate that we're going to drop that down to 50% usage once we implement this new policy. TAC right now is sitting at about 45% usage. We expect it to drop down to about 35 once we implement the new policy. We got you covered. And frankly, nothing would make me happier than going to the NSF and saying, you know, we're at 85% capacity or 90% capacity. We need to start looking at adding on. We would all be very happy with that.
And is 2,039 active users, are those PIs, or does that include
No,
grad students and people? in
This is everybody. The 314 active are PIs.
Okay.
Yeah, so that the allocations, active allocations are tied to one person, whereas this are all the people that are on it, and that's actually about 2,400 users today. Yes.
You have to, excuse me, I have to leave in just a minute, but
Sure.
Can you mentioned Hadoop? Is that in process or is that online now?
Well, there's two forks to that. So the first is Hadoop as a service is in process. We're working on beta testing that right now. So, and that would literally be where you go into the API web interface and say, flop out a Hadoop cluster of this size with this many pieces to it, this size data lake, et cetera, and it just does it. So that is still in testing. There are people doing Hadoop now using the API side that it's on a small scale. Now, if you're talking you need 100 terabyte data lake, we're going to have a problem. I mean, we don't have that sort of resource to give up to a single user. But if you want to do it for teaching purpose or on a small scale, we can absolutely accommodate that today. It just requires a little more development on your side.
Things such as Twitter feeds, limited in scope.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
If we're consuming Twitter feeds
Okay.
based on a particular medical
Sure.
grade,
We have people doing that now. In fact, that political science one of the ones that I was talking about from political science, he is actually consuming a ridiculous amount of Twitter feed. I mean, huge amount of Twitter feed for Twitter. I mean, considering they're all, 288 characters or whatever. But that's what they're consuming now. And they're not doing Hadoop, but they are doing Spark. I'm trying to remember what the technology they're using. But basically, they're doing a large text analysis on that sort of thing.
Yeah,
So
Hadoop is an ecosystem with lots of...
yeah, there's so many pieces, parts.
It doesn't be native.
But it's very doable. The one thing is Hadoop is a service where I say, literally you click a button and it flops out the Hadoop cluster for you. That's still in development. But it can be done. And people are doing it. Thanks for coming. Other questions before we move on? Okay. So what comes next? So our first year of operations completed in September. Like I said, we're about to do our next NSF review. We've already been invited to tack on another year, so we presume that means that things are going well and they're happy with us. We're always soliciting allocations. So the different kinds of allocations defined with XD are startup, education, and research. We're going to talk a little bit about what goes into those coming up, but those are important things to know. We're always adding services. Heat, for example, is a scripted deployment service, so you can basically say, you can define everything you need, like your networks and your host size and all that is scripted and literally just flop out everything you need from the API side. Magnum, which is container orchestration. Manila with file systems as a service, etc. We're always updating. We're always on working with partnerships to expand Jetstream's reach. That's why I'm here today, in fact. So getting access to Jetstream. So you can get a trial allocation today. Now the thing about trial allocations, they're very limited. You can only run 2 instances and only up to 2 vCPUs. So if you wanted to do something like try out MATLAB, a trial allocation isn't going to help because you need a 6-core minimum to launch MATLAB. Well, at least on Jetstream. That's mostly due to disk size more than anything else. You can get startup allocations anytime. When I say startups, they're simple. They don't go before a board, they go before one person. Hi. That person reviews them rigorously, and then you get access. And what you get with the startup allocation is up to 50,000 core hours for a year. What we ask in return is we want a paragraph about what you're doing, your current CV, that's it. So getting a startup allocation is pretty simple. Education allocations are almost as simple. You'll give us a syllabus, You'll give us a resource justification. That's basically explaining why you want the amount of resource you want, and that's something we can work with you on. So if you aren't sure exactly what size VM you need or how many SUs to ask for, you can ask us, and we'll be more than happy to work with you on that. And then research allocations are for the big allocations. When I say big, we're talking millions of SUs. So an SU is a service unit. It is core hours, the way to think of it. So when you're talking millions of core hours, it's being able to do research on a large scale. And that gets a little more involved. That goes before a panel that's done quarterly. It is up to 10 pages. Don't let it be daunting to you. Up to 10 pages. Doesn't have to be 10 pages. And then a scaling doc up to 5. And again, that's something we can work with you on as well. Plus, Exceed has a lot of resources on their website for writing a good research allocation, and that we can help you get there. We do like to talk about our outreach. So every year we are doing a research experience for undergrads. This is we've accepted all of our applicants for this year, and they'll be coming on site, in 3 weeks. So we're about to be underway again. We have, I want to say, 5 students this year. I think we may have added a 6th since I put the slide together. So that application is now closed, but we'll be doing it again for next year. So if you have students that next year are looking for something for the summer, it is a paid internship experience. And they get to do a lot of cool things. And the ever-present, where can I get help? So these slides are available, by the way. I sent them to Amy just a little while ago, plus she has my last set up, which are very similar from last time. It has this slide deck in it. This is the thing that everybody is most interested in. Where can I get help? So the wiki is the place. It's the definitive go-to. Most of your answers will be there. If you don't find them there, if the answer isn't there, there's your next spot. And that comes to a collection of people that will answer your questions and help you find the answers. One of those people is me. Then we have a couple of virtual workshops, which I sent Amy a link to as well. It has some of the information we covered today, and then also some of the practical getting started with Jetstream. So actually logging in, using Jetstream with videos, so it has kind of walkthroughs for using the Atmosphere interface. And then also I have a handful of business cards up here that are the Jetstream business cards. They have the wiki information and the email on it as well. So if you don't have one of those and you want one, please do grab one on the way out.
And I'll send the email afterwards if you're attending, and you can always contact one for myself and me and I work together. So.
And Jane always knows where to find me.
Yeah, I always know where.
I can't get away from her.
Yeah, no. You're too good of a resource for us.
And then this is just for fun. So at IU Bloomington, we have chilled air doors on the cluster. So this is actually the back of the cluster. When everything's going well, we're blue. When everything gets upset, we go red. We're very, very thankful our PI did not see the second picture where it went red, because IU's colors being cream and crimson, we would have been told to stay red all the time. And that's not good, because we would have been on fire. And then another one. So one of our, actually our lead system engineer got an infrared camera, so he just did this because he was curious. The interesting thing is we're actually cooling the room here. So we're actually absorbing more heat than we're putting out. The interesting thing is this is all, there's a system right across here that you can't see that is making our system much hotter. So we want them to move. This is what I like to call our NASCAR slide. This has our paid partners and our unpaid partners that have worked with us all along the way. And then we're at the end. Questions, comments, thoughts? Interpretive dance? I'm always open to interpretive dance. You guys performing, not me performing. I actually had somebody take me up on interpretive dance one time. It was fantastic. I don't think it'll ever happen again. Did you have a question?
Yeah, so, well, 3 questions, 2 with
Sure.
related. So I'll go with 2 related ones. So again, looking at for usually our first year students, we have 2 additional clients, for lack of a better term.
Mm-hmm.
So again, here in college has a partnership with the university in China,
Okay.
where they're supposed to be doing the exact same curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
Would they be able to access these resources as well?
That's on China's firewall, not us.
Okay.
We do not have we have a restriction on ITAR countries. China is not one. There are a handful of countries that are embargoed by the U.S. We actually have that listed on our wiki because we found out the hard way that sadly there are a couple places that can't get to us, and that's because of U.S. embargo reasons. China should have access. We do not block them. So if they block them, as long as the rule on it is, as long as you're working with an American PI, with a U.S.-based researcher, you can have foreign collaborators. That's absolutely fine.
And then the counterpart to that is that we also have, Ohio has a College Credit Plus program where certain courses can be taught at high school level.
Sure.
So they would, again, be doing the same course.
Absolutely. Yeah, the only downside is that whoever the PI of the project is, so if it's an education allocation, whoever the PI is, you're responsible for them. So you have to put the fear into God in high school students sometimes of don't do anything stupid. We catch Bitcoin miners faster than you would ever expect. And I mean, the best thing is that especially without GPUs, you can probably Bitcoin enough for a can of Coke before we catch you. Maybe. Our security guys do real-time scanning, and we have caught every Bitcoin miner, usually within a couple hours of them starting. So, unfortunately, they always seem to be freshmen. So I imagine you probably run into that with high school students too. But yeah, but that's absolutely fine. We encourage it. We have a lot of high school coursework going on in conjunction with college courses.
And the last one, I think I really answered you, but
sure.
So some of the activities that we do in the courses, the way it's currently set up, uses simple data acquisition hardware. I assume there's no way to work that in virtual machines.
I mean, unless you're going to come to Bloomington and plug in, and then you have to shut it up through the virtualization layers. What is it, out of curiosity?
Well, so we have been using National Inference Supply Packs.
Okay.
We're looking into using hardware as well.
I don't think I have a good answer for that.
I assume it wasn't possible.
We may have an answer though at the university. CDCH has a virtual environment that they've stood up and that we're working with the state of Ohio to expand. And that may be something that we could work with that. They're looking at making it a central system that would be a cost, but there may be something that we could do with that. And I don't know, it's not tied to what you're doing. I mean, there's a lot, there's all kinds of ways to handle these things, but we can kind of investigate that. There are some limitations too, I think, with MATLAB from the meeting that I was at with PK and Terry and George, because they can't, I think they can't just have MATLAB then as a tool. Like this is not a replacement for, and correct me if I'm wrong, for students having MATLAB, right? It's really for an educational thing, and then it's like
it's for specific purposes. We're not here to replace infrastructure for a university. But if it's a directed college course, this is a course you're teaching that has a purpose, it has a start date and an end date, yes.
Yeah.
We're not here to replace this lab. But we are here to, I know a lot of, like I said, at IU, MATLAB is limited to, you can use it in this lab.
And if they're using it in a lab, they're using it for a course, right? Or for research. So I don't think that's really going to be a problem, but just so, but maybe when the kids aren't in the class anymore, then maybe they need to come into a research allocation, like we're working with the Intelligent Maintenance Systems group, that they're going to be using this for research.
To do it, to use it outside of an education allocation for this purpose, like you have your 1,200 engineering students. If they want to keep using it for their next set of research, they need to work with a PI or mentor to get an allocation, and that's absolutely fine. It's just, if you wrote me an allocation that said, I'm writing this because, I want to replace my lab in the School of Engineering because we want to save that money, I'm going to have to go reject. But if you say, I have these engineering students and they need to use MATLAB for this purpose, for this length of time, we're all good.
So, I guess one of the reasons why we ended up with MATLAB is that it's not used in courses farther on in the curriculum in different departments.
Sure.
So in that instance, then each of those additional courses would have to...
They would have to get their own allocation, but that's not a problem. Again, getting an education allocation, syllabus, current CV for the instructor, and the resource justification, and we'll help you with that resource justification. So simple.
Yeah, and I think once we get this process down for you guys, it will just be, and I was going to say that, I met Jeremy, I was on the NSF review panel, for Jetstream last year, and the program officer we had put in a proposal for our local HPC here, and he came back and said, you know, how about you look at these other resources I use down the road, we need people to be using it. So our partnership is very strong, and also with the NSF program director, I recently was out in Carnegie Mellon and did the same for Bridges. And Bridges is focusing much more on resources for machine learning and artificial intelligence. They have a lot of GPUs. So they're going to be coming out here also, hopefully in June. But again, we're in a good location that if people can come here easily and they really see the as a level 1 research university without having a local centralized HPC system. We need these resources, and I think we have a real opportunity. They want us to, although I'm still working on a local one too. But
local never hurts, but
yeah.
having, to me, a healthy HPC, healthy research ecosystem is you have a local resource, and then you have all of the resources beyond for when you go beyond it. Because there's always going to be more than you can provide locally, always.
Yep. So, but we have that in the works, and then also have Supercomputer Center. I know Kumar, you were one of the users on there, and she said we are. I just was meeting with Nelson Vincent this morning that we're sending out a letter that the university will be paying for those, since that is going to be as a fee service. But we're getting together a advisory committee of users who use it currently, and we met with the big guys last week, Tom Beck, our physicist and computational chemist, to get their input. But we're going to create this advanced research computing committee, and so anybody who's interested, please contact me, and then to guide what we're going to do going forward to help develop this advanced research computing ecosystem here that then leads into these regional and national resources. So that's it for me.
That's it for me. Unless you guys have more questions.
I'll emphasize all of the documents, all of these Bridges resources are on our website, the UCIT Research and Development, so you can go there and find everything that's been talked about today, and our names and contacts.
And I sent you Kumar an email.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So for the research allocation, is it really competitive, or is it?
It's not competitive as in you're competing with each other. It's competitive in the sense of you have to justify your science, basically.
Okay.
I like to think of it as I tell people it's an NSF light proposal, basically. So you
Extra
provide,
Extra light.
You provide background on your science. You provide information about your computation plan. You provide information on what you've done to date, and then your scaling of your testing and how it's performed under whatever circumstances. Basically trying to find, especially where it comes to Jetstream, is finding your sweet spot of performance. For instance, we had somebody doing genomics analysis, and he had beautiful graphs of plotting his run times and versus cores. And it was a beautiful curve. It was a textbook curve. And the sweet spot, the best performance for his software was 6 cores. And he was requesting 24 core machines. And so, of course, the people reading that went, and they said, sorry, you need to go back and redo your analysis. Rightfully so. I couldn't argue against it. I go to all the resource allocation meetings and fight for people because it's my job. But you basically do your homework of what is your science, what is your computation plan, what resources are you consume, and can you use them efficiently? And that's really what it comes down to. And there are, on the XSEED website, on xseed.org, there's sample plans that basically, they show exemplars of these are research allocations that have been granted and are sort of the textbook, this is how you do it. So they tell you, you have to do these things to get accepted. And most of the time when I see people get rejected, it's because there's literally bullet points that tell you you have to include all of these things, and they leave one out. So if you follow instructions, it's really not bad. But you're not competing, since you're not competing for dollars, you are competing for a scarcity of resources. But if you ask for something within reason, and we can consult with you on what's reasonable for what you want to do, you'll probably get it. Research allocations, we haven't turned down any for any reasons because it was beyond the scope of what we could do for it. Some have been turned away by the board because they couldn't follow instructions, and I don't have control over that, unfortunately. What I do have control over is, will this technically work on Jetstream? Can they do this on Jetstream? And my answer in every case so far has been yes, except for the ones wanting GPUs right now. And we can help you with that, so we can consult with you.
And I came to locally. Yeah.
Sorry.
I'm just not sure what is, if say for example, what is the allocation document?
I'm sorry?
In the
Oh.
proposal,
Yeah.
there is an allocation document, and there's 5 pages. I'm just wondering,
You know what? I will.
yeah, maybe I can.
That's what.
Yeah, usually
You probably have all the information already to put on into it based
Yeah.
on whatever you're proposing, your work and your science. It's just, the format.
Yeah,
will
so
show
the
you.
science,
And
I
this
think,
is where you'll go to get an exceed account also, and then you get that.
Oh, okay.
So, these are all zip files. But basically, they talk about, you can download different areas here. And even if there's not one for your area,
Out there, zip files.
yeah, you can kind of see.
Required components, maybe that.
Yes. The required components tell you exactly. So here's the main document.
Okay.
And this tells you exactly what you need to do.
Okay.
And so between this and actually downloading a couple of the exemplars and looking at it, it shouldn't be any problem. And the times people get rejected are when they just can't follow instructions. And the biggest one, resource usage plan. The biggest reason people get rejected that I see is they do not list local disclosure to local resources, which is so simple and such a silly reason to get rejected. But people just leave it out. They either overlook it or they don't think it's that important. But
I can put a blurb that I can put a paragraph on my website that you just take it, a template, and you just throw it in.
Do you have a facility statement?
Yeah, we have a facilities and resources
That's
statement.
almost perfect. You can
Yeah,
take right
that
from
you can
it.
also include in your NSF. And
yeah.
it basically says we don't really have anything.
Yeah. The
We
best thing
have
about
access to these resources.
Yeah, the
is what
best
it
thing about our
says.
facility statement is, it'll say we have these HPC resources or these that. And
Yeah.
if your list is very short, you can say here it is, and
Yeah.
if you want to look at it, here's the URL. But
Yeah,
this is it.
yeah, we have that document.
That is the biggest reason things get rejected is people leave that out, and the reviewers will not let you get away with that.
Okay. And you also mentioned this is done quarterly, right?
Yeah, this is quarterly. So it
yeah,
actually.
what's the timeline?
Yes, so if you want an allocation, you have to wait for the quarterly review.
That's actually in here, I think. Oh, yep, there we go.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we're getting ready to have our next meeting. The next window opens June 15th, so a month and a half away.
And but then they don't get their allocation
Until October 1.
1st.
Yeah. Yeah, so the submission window is there, but the review panel is still another month after that. So we're now, in the first week of June, we're going to be doing the reviews for the March 15th and April 15th. And part of that is the logistics of getting 50 reviewers all in one place, because that's what we have to do, basically.
Just like Amazon Web Services, right? You have to wait 3 months to get your, that was my one criticism of the price. It's hard to compete with Amazon when you have.
There's 200 and typically most research windows have between 200 and 300 submissions. So that's a lot of review.
So for educational, is it the same?
No, education gets reviewed anytime.
Yeah, I was going to say. So just do that.
And startups get reviewed anytime. So if you want to get a startup right now to get to work, you said you were a grad student still, PhD student?
No, I'm not.
Yeah.
Oh, your system, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah. So you are PI eligible.
Yeah.
You are PI eligible today. You can go get a startup today and start working and see if it'll work for you. And that way, by the time the next research window opens, you could have enough test data to basically say, I've run it in this scale. We want to ramp it up to this scale.
Right. And then you would know that the resource
Works for you.
Yeah, because that was one of the options, right? Yeah.
Yeah, we can get you going today. In fact, let me.
And if you, so Jeremy and I are working with Dr. Wendy Anderson too. She's writing a proposal to the Gates Foundation and is proposing to use this. So Jeremy and I both helped her put in the wording. They have some canned wording. So if you want to, if you want to write a proposal to then use this resource, we can help you do that too. So that she's planning or is proposing to use it in Ghana to have them collect immunization data. And since they don't have large computers to run it, they can run it on their mobile systems and still run the compute backend and storage. So it's really kind of a perfect use, and it's something that hasn't been done before. So we can help you. We like to write things. We like to save money.
And that actually, if you go to portal.exceed.org, now this is all in the wiki too, so the wiki will actually walk you through all of this. It'll walk you, thanks for coming. It'll walk you through getting a portal account, it'll walk you through getting a startup application. Most everything for the basics is all in the wiki. But this is actually where you go to get started. So for Exceed side of it. To give the distinction, Jetstream is allocated through Exceed, but we're an independent resource. So we're part of we are a partner with Exceed, is I guess the way to put it.
Do you have a question?
So my question is, what a typical session would look like. You, let's say, you want to do something on Jetstream. You fire up a session. If you don't already have a virtual machine set up, you start one.
Would you bring them up?
I've got one running right now. If you want me to.
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
I wish I could actually come back to the hands-on session this afternoon, but Greg's I did today.
Oh.
That.
Oh.
Well, I believe they're going to come back again next month. We're going to keep kind of like what we've been doing with the Ohio Supercomputer Center. It's just trying to keep these folks coming here so we can continue to expose people, because there's a lot of grad students that weren't able to come today too.
So this is actually an active instance that I'm running. This is what we're going to be using this afternoon for the API training. So I've already launched this. I can walk you through what it looks like to launch one. I mean, literally, you come in, let's go to images. It's going to, now you see a lot of things in mine that you won't see in yours, so the featured images, so here's that MATLAB image. So this is the new one. It's based on Ubuntu 16.04. There's all the toolboxes. So we want to launch that, so I say launch. Now best practice is, this is a test launch. Always give it a meaningful name, just because otherwise you end up with the default name and you end up with 20 things all named the same exact thing, and you have to go and log into each one and find out what it is.
So it'll let you say the name, the instance name, the same as the other one.
Yeah, you can have. Oh yeah, because from OpenStack's point of view, it doesn't care about the names at all. It has a long string of numbers, and that's what it identifies it as. Yeah. So I tell it what provider that I want to be on. If I want to be on. You don't have to. You can just take the default. Now, the important thing is that if you have a data volume created that you want to use, it has to be on the same cloud as the instance. So if you have a volume that you've started at TAC, you have to launch on TAC to actually use that volume there. You have your instance size. So a medium is the smallest you can actually run for MATLAB, but you can go all the way up to an extra large, which is 44 cores. Taking that is basically taking an entire node of Jetstream. For MATLAB, we've actually found MATLAB only licenses up to 24 cores without paying for the distributed, it's the DSL license, distributed something license. Yeah, and we don't actually have that because it costs a ridiculous amount of money. In fact, TAC, even on Stampede 2, which is an 18 petaflop system, they don't have that. So that tells me they didn't figure it was worth it. So you can launch an XXL, but it's not really going to buy anything.
You can buy it for yourself, it's $250 per year, but for you. But
yeah.
Well, what we found with MATLAB is often, if you really want to do the kinds of things we do, which is build on top of linear algebra, then it's better to do your own coding rather than depend on MATLAB. At a certain point, MATLAB is not that efficient.
And we've actually found, I've got a geosciences project that uses the MATLAB runtimes, and they're feeding morph data into it, and it's just not efficient. And I think they're going to end up rewriting using Python libraries to actually process it, because they've crossed, before it was fine, but they've crossed a threshold in the size of the data, and it's just not efficient anymore. And I think that's the same thing you're describing. It's basically once you cross a certain point. Yeah. So literally at this point, you click launch, and it's going to do its thing. Now this will probably take 5 to 10 minutes to launch, but I have another one running that I'll show you kind of what it looks like when you log in.
Sure.
So there's another option besides
besides MATLAB, right, that PK was talking about? Is there an open source version of that?
There's something called Octave,